Let your emotions flow. See, emotions exist only in this time right now. This is when you're most alive. And so when you connect with your emotions, you're becoming aware in the moment of this emotional flowing. Now, the great disease of humanity is when you repress these emotions. When you begin to label or judge them in yourself or in others, that's when you tend to repress them. For example, if you're crying and you don't want to appear weak, either to someone else or yourself, you'll judge the crying as a weakness, when in actuality, the reality is the emotion that may have caused this crying, the crying is an outlet for that emotion. But culture has judged those who cry versus those who don't as weak or strong. And so I've encountered this situation where many times people just repress that emotion. They don't express it. And so what happens to it if it can't get itself out of the energy grid, so to speak? Well, it gets stored away, it gets locked up. It becomes an emotional charge, much like energy will get stored up, much like a battery cell can store energy. The brain will lock the experience, associate this strong emotional charge with this experience. So anytime you even come close to approaching it, in terms of anything that reminds you of that experience, those emotions will come back. And then again, you'll have another attempt to say repress it, and then everything in that moment will also become locked up with that emotion. So it will all become interrelated or connected. So anything that reminds you of that experience might actually trip the emotion again and send it going forward. So in other words, if you've stored up one intense emotional experience and then something reminded you of it, that becomes another series of connections connected with that painful emotion. That one emotion, that root emotion, the root experience that caused it, can create an entire series of experiences that are now all linked up with that emotion. And so the odds of setting it off again and again increase. And so and as they do increase, and as it does get set off, it creates even more and more. It's almost exponential, the amount of experiences that could actually get set off by any future reminders of any kind that, again, will create that energy and motion to flow through your system when you could have just released it the first time that it occurred. So how do you release the emotions when they're occurring? Well, just let them flow. Let your natural biological system take charge. Honor the crying. Honor the tension that it might feel that it wants to release through yelling. The only time you cross the line in emotional neutralizing is when it's going to be a destructive action, either to yourself or to others. And it's possible to actually feel an intense emotion without taking an action that's destructive. In other words, it's possible to feel a great deal of rage and create a pause between that stimulus and your physical response. It's up to you and a great deal of, say, willpower or awareness in that moment to experience the emotion and have healthy outlets for neutralizing it. And so that is what you're going to work on today. You're going to become aware of emotions that you might have experienced in the past that might be sort of messing with your experiences now because they remind you of that emotion. So you're going to become aware of the emotions in the past that you would like to neutralize. You're going to come up with a list of healthy emotional neutralizers. And that includes crying, that includes yelling, that includes running, that includes listening to uplifting music. Have a list of emotional neutralizers that you can use to neutralize these past emotions. Start going to work on those. And then in the future, when you recognize these emotional patterns coming back, whether it be anger or sadness or depression or whatever negative emotion that you want to avoid or that you normally repress, have some emotional neutralizers that you can immediately set to work. As soon as you notice that stimulus, boom, you have a response. That's your exercise for today. Recognize past emotions you'd like to neutralize. Recognize emotional neutralizers, create a list. And thirdly, start putting that list to use now and in the future when you experience energy in motion, rather than repressing it and creating more of these repressed emotions that will eventually keep seeking an outlet in your everyday experience. So let your energy, let your emotions flow, and notice what it feels like to reach a state of neutral peace most of the time. For more tips on how to live your full potential, visit fullpotential.com.